The workday came and went, uneventful and vacuous. Hours of clock watching. Work hadn't been like that in years. Costello enjoyed his craft and felt blessed to have a place to go where he was good at what he did and people acknowledged his talent. Life was just suddenly in a different stride. He was finding out he had personal desires larger than a nod at work for doing the bidding of another person. He sat with his boss after calling it a day and discussed his leave being extended. Of course, nothing about the potential of him pounding out license plates in prison, but the tour to Maine. He did hint at the idea of him never returning and expressed they should consider continuing the idea of his replacement becoming permanent. He gave them high marks and felt good about passing the torch on to the person he worked with on this short unpaid day. He started home with full intention on getting some sleep. Then Avery texted. She's ready to begin conditioning training for his tour as promised. Costello wanted no part of that and stopped any notion of that happening right in its tracks. She explained it wouldn't be any physical activity, fully understanding she kept him up all night and then sent him to work like a peasant at the salt mines. She felt rather compelled to introduce Costello to plant medicine. They talked briefly about his risperidone and she was keen to his struggle with the mental health. The hesitancy to open the doors all the way to Avery was compelling. The only person he ever let in his life that deep was Jenna. Not only was it frightening to consider doing that with Avery so soon, but it seemed rather gauche to share something so sacred with the woman who intrinsically led him to Jenna. In due time, it could be a marker he bestows. For now, maintaining a semblance of space seemed appropriate. Costello decided tonight he would stay in and start working on the itinerary for the first leg of the tour. He decided to call Avery and break the news to her. No text, no social media message. An old-world method of communicating in serious terms. A way to both express and hear intonation, avoiding any confusion in translation. He'd experienced so many misinterpreted conversations via typed elucidation, and he wanted a clear concord. Costello texted her and asked if she was clear for a phone call. Of course, she got a bit of a snort out of that, since she loved lampooning him about acting like a senior on occasion, but she acquiesced his request. However, she was busy at the moment, so she asked Costello to call in about an hour. He wasn't sure if she was serious or intentionally torturing him. He just agreed and started working on the itinerary. The solace was engaging, almost as though the oxygen was pumped in from an outside source. It felt like it had been weeks since he was last alone and free to think without rebuttal. Not only was he free from those around him in his brightest existence, but nobody was visiting him in between the ether. His medication seemed to be clicking on all cylinders and brought Costello to a place of balance. Exactly what he needed, a balanced environment where he could draft his itinerary to Maine. Something convinced him the trip home would just fall into place. Certainly Avery or someone would make sure he comes back in one piece. After pedaling thousands of miles and surely battling demons along the way, he'll need an assist on the road home. Many cyclists do these long tours with a follow vehicle. Costello wanted to be alone. He felt this was the only way he would fulfill the goal. Fuck's sake, his doctor's having no part in this tour at all. So why not make it as dangerous as possible? He'd already reached out to a roadside assistance company and negotiated a deal. He will have a GPS tracker with him, and the company is to receive a call every 6 hours. Unless he calls and lets them know he's down for the night, they must receive a call every 6 hours on the dot, or they send a tow truck to his location. No questions asked. He hadn't discussed it with Avery yet, but she will be a lifeline on this tour. He hopes she is open to being an active teammate who takes his calls and helps him fight through the tough times while celebrating the good times. The time of year is ideal. He'll have great weather throughout the Southwest and hit some cool patches as he comes through the Midwest and into the Mid-Atlantic. His only concern is he's never cycled with a trailer. The only way to make this happen without a follow vehicle will be to pack a small trailer in tow. The next week and a half will be filled with rides towing a trailer filled with about 80 pounds of gear. He hasn't even really been cycling, and now he's leveling up to this shit. It all seemed exhilarating, though. He couldn't wait. This is the hardest he's ever pushed himself to do anything, ever. Plus, after this, he'll be in the best shape of his life in case he has to fight for a shank in prison. That fucking thought just wouldn't pass. It went from a hapless, fleeting thought to a thoroughly terrifying reality. Costello never scurried from the reality. However, he owned his fuck-ups and would pay his penance. The nobility was rather nauseating, but also respectable. Now let's put all that aside and plan a tour.